The rain fell in relentless sheets, hammering the cracked pavement outside Ethan's small, weathered apartment. Thunder growled in the distance, a low rumble that seemed to echo the weight in his chest. He stood at the window, staring into the storm, his calloused hands gripping the sill as if it could anchor him against the chaos of his life. Ethan Harper, a 34-year-old single father, was drowning, not in the rain, but in the endless struggle to keep his world from collapsing. His 5-year-old son, Noah, slept soundly in the next room, oblivious to the eviction notice taped to their door, the empty fridge, or the overdue medical bills piling up on the counter. Ethan's heart ached with the familiar sting of failure, a father unable to shield his son from the harsh edges of the world. But tonight, something would shift, something that would pull Ethan into a moment that would change his life forever. In the alley below, a faint cry pierced through the storm's roar, sharp and desperate, like a blade slicing through the night. Ethan's breath caught. He leaned closer to the window, squinting through the rain-streaked glass, and saw her, a woman, crumpled against the alley wall, her body shaking as she shielded a tiny figure clutched in her arms. Without a second thought, Ethan grabbed his coat and bolted into the storm, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and instinct. What he found in that alley would unravel a story of pain, redemption, and a truth so shocking it would leave him questioning everything he thought he knew. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of human connection, please hit that like button, drop a comment, share this story, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks. Your support helps us spread stories that inspire and uplift, reminding us all that even in our darkest moments, hope can shine through. Ethan's boots splashed through the puddles as he raced down the rickety fire escape, the cold rain soaking through his thin jacket. The alley was a narrow, shadowed trench, littered with discarded bottles and soggy cardboard. The woman was slumped against a dumpster, her dark hair plastered to her face, blood trickling from a cut above her eye. She was young, maybe in her late 20s, but her face carried a weariness that aged her beyond her years. In her arms, a small girl, no more than 2 years old, clung to her, her tiny body trembling, her whimpers barely audible over the storm. The woman's eyes, wide with fear, locked onto Ethan's as he approached, her body tensing as if bracing for another blow. "Hey, it's okay," Ethan said softly, crouching to her level, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. "I'm not gonna hurt you. You're safe now." The woman didn't speak, but her grip on the child tightened, her gaze darting past him as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. Ethan's heart twisted. He knew that look, the raw terror of someone who'd been hunted. He'd seen it in his own reflection years ago, when life had dealt him blows he wasn't sure he'd survive. Carefully, he extended a hand, not touching her but offering a lifeline. "Let me help you," he said. "You can't stay out here." The woman hesitated, her breath ragged, then nodded faintly, too exhausted to resist. Ethan helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as she clutched the child, and guided them back to his apartment, the storm raging behind them like a beast unwilling to let go. Inside, the apartment was dim and cluttered, a testament to Ethan's struggle to keep things together. The couch sagged under a pile of unfolded laundry, and Noah's toys were scattered across the floor, a small oasis of color in an otherwise gray space. Ethan settled the woman on the couch, wrapping a worn blanket around her shoulders. The little girl, her cheeks streaked with tears, curled into her mother's lap, her wide brown eyes watching Ethan warily. He grabbed a towel and a first aid kit, his hands moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd patched up his own wounds too many times. As he cleaned the cut on her forehead, the woman flinched but didn't pull away. Her name, she whispered, was Leela. The girl was her daughter, Sophie. She offered no more, and Ethan didn't press. He knew better than to pry into pain that wasn't ready to be shared. Instead, he boiled water for tea and scrounged up the last of Noah's crackers for Sophie, who nibbled them quietly, her tiny fingers clutching the edge of the blanket. Ethan's mind raced with questions. Who had done this to her? Why were they out in the storm? But he pushed them aside, focusing on the immediate. keeping them warm, safe, fed. When Noah woke, rubbing his eyes, he didn't question the strangers in their home. Instead, he toddled over to Sophie, offering her his favorite stuffed dinosaur with a shy smile. Leela's eyes welled up at the gesture, and for the first time, Ethan saw a flicker of hope in her expression, fragile but real. The next few days were a blur of quiet survival. Leela and Sophie stayed with Ethan, sleeping on the couch while he and Noah shared the single bedroom. Ethan stretched his meager savings to buy groceries, skipping his own meals to ensure there was enough for everyone. Work at the auto shop was grueling, his hands stained with grease and his back aching from long hours, but he pushed through, driven by a sense of responsibility he couldn't fully explain. Leela was guarded, her words few, but she began to open up in small ways, helping with dishes, reading to Noah and Sophie, her voice soft but steady. Sophie, too, started to come out of her shell, her laughter filling the apartment when Noah chased her in a game of tag. For Ethan, these moments were a lifeline, a reminder that there was still good in the world, even if it came wrapped in hardship. But the weight of his own struggles never lifted. The landlord's threats grew louder, the medical bills loomed, and Ethan's heart sank every time he checked his bank account, the numbers mocking his efforts. Yet, seeing Leela and Sophie safe gave him a purpose he hadn't felt since his wife, Sarah, had passed 3 years earlier, leaving him to raise Noah alone. Sarah's death had shattered him, turning a once optimistic man into someone who fought just to get through each day. Saving Leela and Sophie felt like a chance to reclaim a piece of himself, to prove he could still do something right. But the past has a way of catching up, and for Leela, it came crashing in with a knock at the door. It was late, the apartment quiet except for the soft hum of the TV. Ethan opened the door to find 2 police officers, their faces grim. Leela froze on the couch, her arms tightening around Sophie, who was asleep in her lap. The officers asked for her by name, Leela Marie Dawson, and Ethan's stomach dropped. They explained that Leela was a missing person, reported by her family over a year ago. But that wasn't all. The man who'd beaten her, the one she'd fled from, was no ordinary abuser. He was Daniel Carver, a name that sent a chill through Ethan when the officers spoke it. Carver was a wanted man, a figure tied to a string of violent crimes, a predator who'd kept Leela and Sophie captive in a nightmare Ethan couldn't begin to imagine. The police had been searching for them, following leads that had gone cold until a neighbor reported seeing a woman and child matching the description entering Ethan's building. The officer's words hit Ethan like a punch. He'd assumed Leela was running from a bad relationship, but this was something darker, something that made his blood run cold. Leela's face was ashen, her hands trembling as she clutched Sophie, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she looked at Ethan, her eyes pleading for understanding, and whispered, "I didn't know how to tell you." The revelation turned Ethan's world upside down. He'd opened his home to strangers, driven by instinct and compassion, but now he was entangled in something far bigger than he'd imagined. The police took Leela and Sophie to the station for questioning, promising they'd be safe, but Ethan couldn't shake the unease gnawing at him. What if Carver was still out there, watching? What if helping Leela had put Noah in danger? The questions kept him up at night, his small apartment feeling both too empty and too heavy with the weight of what he'd learned. Yet, even as fear crept in, Ethan couldn't regret his choice. Leela's haunted eyes, Sophie's timid smile, they were real, human, and worth protecting, no matter the cost. Over the next few days, he visited the station, bringing Noah's dinosaur for Sophie and checking on Leela, who was navigating a maze of legal processes and trauma counseling. She told him fragments of her story, how Carver had charmed her at first, how the abuse had escalated, how she'd escaped with Sophie in the dead of night, running until the storm had forced them into that alley. Each word was a knife to Ethan's heart, a reminder of how fragile safety could be. But there was something else in Leela's story, something that stirred a memory Ethan couldn't place, a connection he felt but couldn't name. The truth came days later, in a quiet moment at the station. A detective sat Ethan down, his expression a mix of gratitude and disbelief. Leela's family, he explained, had been searching for her since she vanished. But there was more, a detail so staggering it left Ethan speechless. Leela's older sister had been Sarah, Ethan's late wife. The realization hit like a tidal wave. Leela had been a teenager when Ethan and Sarah married, living across the country with their estranged mother, and Ethan had never met her. Sarah had spoken of her rarely, their relationship strained by distance and family drama, but the love had been there, buried under years of silence. Leela hadn't known Ethan was Sarah's husband when she stumbled into his life, she'd only known she needed to survive. The alley, the storm, their meeting, it wasn't random. It was as if Sarah's memory had guided them together, a final act of love from a woman who'd left too soon. Ethan's knees buckled, tears streaming down his face as he processed the weight of it. Leela was his sister-in-law, Sophie his niece. The family he'd saved was his own, bound by a thread he hadn't seen until now. In the weeks that followed, Ethan's life transformed. Leela and Sophie moved in permanently, the apartment now a chaotic but warm home for four. The police caught Carver, his arrest splashed across the news, and Leela began to heal, step by painful step. Ethan found a better job through a friend at the auto shop, one that paid enough to keep the landlord at bay and start chipping away at the bills. Noah and Sophie became inseparable, their laughter a daily reminder that joy could bloom even in the hardest places. Ethan felt Sarah's presence in the quiet moments, when Leela smiled at a shared memory of her sister, when Sophie's tiny hand slipped into his. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was building something new, a family forged not just by blood but by choice, by the courage to reach out in the dark. The struggles didn't vanish, money was still tight, the past still heavy, but they were shared now, carried by more than one set of shoulders. Ethan looked at his son, his niece, his sister-in-law, and felt a flicker of hope he hadn't known in years. He'd rescued Leela and Sophie, but in truth, they'd rescued him, too, pulling him from the edge of despair and showing him that even broken things could be made whole again. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of kindness and the strength of family, please hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks. Your support helps us keep telling stories that inspire, heal, and connect us all. And before you go, drop a comment below, tell us what moved you most, or share a moment when kindness changed your life. We read every single one, and your stories mean the world to us.